Hello everyone, welcome to another interesting and informative session of the Analyst brought to you by Vajiram and Ravi. In today's session, we will discuss 9 important articles as featured in the Hindu and Indian Express for your comprehensive understanding of the current affairs. The 5 main articles are as follows. In the first topic, we will read about the various impediments along India's clean cooking strategy, which is guided by Ujjwala Yojana. Then in the second topic, we will inquire about India's abysmal ranking in Human Development Report 2023. Followed by the third topic, where we will analyze the issue of air pollution and National Clean Air Program. Then in the fourth topic, we will read about the non-market economy status. And finally, in the fifth topic, we will read about a very interesting concept of setting a standard time for the moon. Towards the end, there will be news snippets especially curated to help you excel in the upcoming prelims examination, so stay tuned. As per the Center for Energy, Environment and Water report, it has found out that the cost of liquefied petroleum gas acts as a foremost barrier to its adoption and continued use in the rural poor household, thus acting as a major impediment to India's clean cooking strategy, which forms an important component of your various themes around your GS paper, such as the government policies and interventions and issues related to poverty in your GS2 paper and the direct and indirect subsidies in your GS3 paper. So the first question which arises is that what was the need to use this LPG or liquefied petroleum gas as a clean cooking fuel? To understand that, we first need to understand the use of solid cooking fuel, which is widely prevalent in our country. What is a solid prevalent fuel? Solid prevalent fuel basically consists of burning of wood, cow dung, charcoal, coal or any kind of agricultural residue, and to use that burning to cook the food ultimately. Thus, as per the Access Survey of 2014-15, there were 750 million Indians which were relying on using this solid cooking fuel. However, it had several impacts which actually necessitated for an alternative clean cooking fuel. For example, if you look here, still there is 41% of Indian population which is reliant on this biomass for cooking, which has a severe impact of creating environment pollution, such as emitting 340 million ton of carbon dioxide gas annually, which is a major greenhouse gas. At the same time, it creates this issue of indoor air pollution, where it has the highest annual PM 2.5 levels in our country. The PM 2.5, which is basically a volatile organic compound which consists of several hazardous elements such as benzene and formaldehyde, which leads to innumerable health hazards such as your respiratory diseases, cardiovascular diseases, as well as cardiac arrest. As per the Global Burden of Disease study of 2020, such indoor air pollution was responsible for 6 lakh premature deaths. Also, it acts as a silent killer among us, because as per the World Health Organization study, there were the death rate which happened in our country that was one among the highest because of this indoor air pollution and exposure to such PM 2.5 particulate matters. Thus, at the same time, we can see that this solid cooking fuel had excessive use, especially in the poverty-ridden states, which cannot afford the costlier alternatives. The poverty-ridden states such as Bihar, MP, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, etc. Thus, the liquefied petroleum gas was offered as a viable alternative. The reason being that first of all, it has a high calorific component, which means that it produces a lot of energy and heat in a very short span of time. Now LPG, which is basically a byproduct from the extraction of oil and refinery, and it majorly constitutes of butane and propane, it has very less sulfur emission. Keep this in mind that it produces 33% less carbon dioxide than the burning of petrol and 45% less carbon dioxide than burning of diesel. At the same time, it has 80% less nitrogen oxide emission. Thus, we can say that in comparison to the solid fuel, it is a clean cooking fuel. Also, it offers us the advantage of easy storage and transportation through various gas pipelines or by storing it in the cylinders. Thus, the government provided a lot of impetus to promote the liquefied petroleum gas. Starting from the year of 2009, when the government launched the Gramin Vitrak Yojana, under which 45 million new gas LPG connections were provided between 2010 to 13, and at the same time the rural distributor base growth increased up to 60% from the earlier 18%. Then in the 2015, the government came with another noble initiative of the PEHL scheme, under which the direct benefit transfer was provided. So let's say that you are a customer and you are buying the liquefied petroleum gas cylinder at the price of 100 rupees, which is basically acting as the MRP for you or the maximum retail price for you. But the government on that purchase will provide you a subsidy, let's say up to 6 to 7% of the cost. Thus, it will ultimately reduce the cost of LPG cylinders for you, thus promoting you to buy it under the PEHL scheme. Then in 2015 itself, the government came up with another initiative of Give It Up program, where the direct home refill deliveries were provided, as well as 10 million LPG consumers were enrolled for the voluntary discontinuation of subsidies. Because earlier the government, when it decided to provide for subsidies, it was providing with a large income bracket, and thus a lot of people who could actually afford the other costlier alternatives, they also started enrolling in the scheme, thus ultimately leading to the false distribution. So the government provided for voluntary discontinuation, and under that 10 million LPG consumers were enrolled. Then the major impetus was provided for this LPG use under the 2016 launched Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, where the government said that we will provide you with a free LPG connection, as well as 1600 rupees subsidy will be provided with each LPG connection if the connection is registered on the woman's name, thus also targeting for women empowerment specifically in the rural areas. Then the first refill and the hot plates, they were made free, and at the same time a subsidy of rupees 200 was provided for the first 6 refills for every 14.2 kg cylinder. Thus the first cylinder which I am getting, it is already filled with LPG gas, and that I am getting for free. Then when I am going for refill, let's say if the cost of the cylinder is 1000 rupees, the government will pay 200 rupees from that. Now, this has been increased to 300 rupees in 2023. However, remember that only 6 refills are free, and from the 7th refill, I will have to pay the original cost. Thus, under this noble initiative, the government achieved the target of 9.5 crore new connections of LPG since the year of 2016, thus increasing the LPG consumers to 17 crore plus. Now, as per the Indian Residential Energy Consumption Survey, the share of Indian households who were using the LPG as their primary cooking fuel, that increased from just a meager 33% in 2011 to a staggering 84% in 2022. Thus, as per the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas data, it will tell you that the LPG coverage in our country is more than 90%. However, as we can see from the data which was provided by National Family Health Survey 5 conducted between 2019 to 21, 41% of the Indians are still reliant on using biomass as a cooking fuel. Now the question arises that if the government is providing such a noble initiative, it is providing you free connection, it is providing you certain amount of free refills as well, subsidized refills, then what is the reason that people are still using the solid cooking fuel? The reason for that lies with the prevailing issues, and the first of that is obviously the unaffordability or the high prices of liquefied petroleum gas. To understand this, first let's try to understand that how the prices of LPG in our country is decided. It is decided on the basis of import parity price, which is basically decided on the price of Saudi Arabia's Aramco company, which is the largest producer of LPG in the world. So by the time this LPG is imported and it reaches to our country, it also included several other costs such as the freight cost, the custom duty, the fees on board charges, as well as insurance cost. Thus, it is obvious that the price of LPG by the time it is coming to our country, it will significantly increase. At the same time, our country is heavily import dependent when it comes to LPG. For example, in the year of 2023, we imported 18 million metric tons of LPG, which costed us around $13 billion. And at the same time, our import dependence has increased by 60% in the last 5 years. Now let's say that we are importing this LPG from our Western countries. Now if there is a geopolitical tension which is taking place in that region, it is obvious that the shipping channels will get disrupted. For example, if there are Houthis attacks which are taking place in the Red Sea region, it is obvious that the container shipping cost will increase, the freight cost will increase, and that will ultimately lead to the issue of imported inflation due to geopolitical tension, which we have discussed in our previous lectures as well. Thus, ultimately, the cost of imported LPG will also increase. Now in this particular case, what the government can do is to make sure that this imported inflation's cost does not reflect on the prices of domestic LPG, the government can provide for subsidies. But even that has been hampered because of the rising fiscal deficit of the government, especially due to the pandemic-induced economic shutdown. For example, as per the interim budget 2024, our current fiscal deficit stands at 5.1%, and the government has set up target to reduce this fiscal deficit to 4.5% in the upcoming years. Thus also making sure that we cannot now provide the rupees 20,000 crore subsidy which was being provided for this LPG consumption. Thus, because of these reasons, as per the Kiev report, the cost which is incurred by the consumer, it has been increased by 6 to 10% on cooking fuel because of the increasing prices of LPG. Which you guys can see on the table here as well, that how the 14.2 kg LPG cylinder, which is the basic standard used in the most of the houses, that has been significantly increasing in the recent time. Thus, it is obvious that if the price of LPG is increasing and there is a consistent provision of cheap and easily available alternative in the form of solid cooking fuel, I will obviously choose the second option. So all I need to do is to go to a tree, pluck some woods, burn it, and I can cook my food. Why I am going to buy this expensive LPG? Then the third major reason is the low refilling rate. So as per the report, only 40% of the consumers actually ask for second refill. And this low rate of refilling is caused because of the major shortcomings in the distribution channels. So for example, around 50% of the home delivery is provided to consumer, but the rest 50% actually gets to travel 10 to 15 or 5 kilometers to buy this LPG. For example, it is actually a personal experience when I used to live in village that we have to go up to the distance of 7 to 8 kilometer to the district main area, and only there you can actually avail these LPG cylinders. And even if they come in such a less number that most of the people have to return empty-handed. So it is obvious that first of all I am paying for the refill, and at the same time I am also paying for this exorbitant cost of traveling to get that refill. Then there is issue of delivery in the urban slum regions as well, because most of the people, they does not have adequate data with them, the adequate identity cards, and thus it leads to the misuse of availing of these LPGs, and then they start selling it for the lower cost. So this issue also takes place. Then as from the May 2020, there has been not any provision of refill subsidy after the 6th refill, which obviously increases the cost of refilling. Further, there is issue of unawareness blockade. So as per a study, in majority of the rural areas, people actually believe that the food which is cooked on chulha, it is much tastier and healthier rather than this gas stove where you are using this LPG fuels, etc. So all of these issues can actually get reflected in the study of Jalpaiguri of West Bengal, where there is 40% of the population which is below poverty line. Thus obviously they cannot afford exorbitant refilling cost. They earn a meager wage, daily wages in the tea states of rupees 250. On the other hand, this cost of cylinder is 1900 rupees. Now, this particular area of Jalpaiguri lies in the highly degraded forest remains in the mosaic tea estates. So it is obvious that there is a lot of availability of the solid cooking fuel which they can easily get and use. Thus, more than 50% of the 200 local shops, they actually use this fuel wood. And the majority of the people there, they actually use the cow dung and firewood for the bulk of the cooking purposes, and they use this costlier LPG only for making tea or chapatis. Thus, to deal with the issues, the report highlights for certain suggestive measures which shall be adopted, such as to reinstate subsidy on the LPG refill for the low-income households. So the report suggests that first of all, the subsidies should be provided for at least 7 to 8 refills a year, and at the same time we can exclude the well-to-do families by lowering down the income line from existing 10 lakh rupees to 2.5 lakh rupees. Then the report suggests that we can strengthen the LPG supply chain and enforce timely delivery of these cylinders. For that purpose, we can actually incentivize the rural distributors, and we can also inculcate the use of artificial intelligence, big data analytics to streamline the supply chain. The third step which we can take is to incentivize the supply of biomass. So the biomass which is basically lying idle with the rural population, obviously they will just use it for cooking the fuel purpose. What we can do is we can actually provide them with some incentives to give this biomass, and we will produce compressed biogas from that under the Satat initiative or the PM Pranam initiative which was released in the budget 2023. Further, this is the high time when we shall actually start looking towards alternative fuels such as the e-cooking fuel, which has high thermal efficiency and low emission. As per the Kiev study, even if we will charge rupees 7 to 8 rupees per unit of electricity tariff, even then that will be much cheaper than the subsidy which is being provided under the PM Ujjwala Yojana. Also, we need to provide for social engineering, right, to incentivize the people, to make them aware the harmful effects of the indoor air pollution which takes place. So with all these suggestive measures, try to attempt this practice question and comment your answer in the comment box. We move forward to the next news. The article highlights India's abysmal ranking in the Human Development Report 2023, which was released in the March, and the widening inequality in our country, thus urging for certain immediate reforms which has become imperative. These issues of human development and why we need to give primacy to them forms an important component of your GS2 paper under the larger theme of human development. So let's first try to examine the various findings of the Human Development Report of 2023 to 2024, which was released by the United Nations Development Programme, in which the country's human development progress is measured on three major pillars. The first of them is the long and healthy life, thus the health pillar. The knowledge pillar, where we also examine several things such as the expected years of schooling, the education index, the mean years of schooling. Then comes the decent standard of living, where we examine the country's progress in the gross national income per capita and the GNI index. Thus, as per the findings of the report, India has been listed as a medium development category, where we have ranked 134th out of 193 countries. Keep this in mind that in the year of 2021, we were ranked 135th. Thus, we have improved our ranking from one position. However, at the same time, also keep in mind that we lie below or behind our neighboring countries such as Bangladesh, Nepal, China, etc. Even though if we compare about our Human Development Index value, it has significantly improved by 48% from the year of 1990, when it stood at 0.434, and now it has increased to 0.644 in the year of 2022. If we look at our performance in various other parameters, it is that in the GNI per capita or gross national income per capita, our income has reached now to $6,951, which has attested of 6.3% increase. Then the expected years of schooling has also significantly increased to 12.6 per individual. It earlier stood at 11.7, and the life expectancy has significantly increased to 67.7 years from the 62.7 years. So as one can see that we have actually achieved a significant growth when it comes to human development. Then what is the reason for India's such an abysmal ranking? What is this paradox? This paradox can be explained by our performance in several other indicators. Thus, we are going to examine the reason for countries' abysmal ranking in the Human Development Report of 2023. Well, it is obvious that there are certain basic necessities which all of us has to actually improve and reach to our optimal potential, to reach to our optimal human development, such as a basic years of schooling. We ensure that there is a nutritional food for us. If we are facing any kind of health issues, there is actually a good health infrastructure which can cure us. Then we have equality in the terms of opportunity for the employment, and there is a decent standard of living where we are actually living in a cleaner environment, which has also recognized as a fundamental right very recently by the Supreme Court. Thus, we are going to examine our country's performance in various parameters by keeping the Sustainable Development Goals target as the basic line. Thus, the first Sustainable Development Goal states that a country shall aspire to ensure that there exists no poverty in the country. As per the Multidimensional Poverty Index of 2023, in our country, there existed at least 15 to 17% of the population which was multidimensionally poor. And this ratio was obviously much higher when it comes to the rural areas. At the same time, there, if you look at the multidimensional poverty index, it was as high as 0.103 in Uttar Pradesh and 0.16 in Bihar. Thus, India is actually not able to curb this issue of rising poverty, and it is also further compounded by the increasing percentage of unemployment rate. At the same time, because of this, there also lies the issue of zero hunger, or the issue of hunger, which is actually affecting our country's demographic dividend. Because as per the Global Hunger Index of 2023, we ranked 111th out of 125 countries with the world's highest child wasting rate of 18%. Then the third sustainable development goal says that a country shall ensure that there exists a sound health infrastructure, which is also a constitutional directive under Article 46. However, if we look at the government health centers, we realize that there exists a huge shortfall. For example, the rural primary healthcare centers, the minimum requirement is 25,000 for the certain population as per the rural health statistics of 2020-21. It actually exists at 1,000. When we talk about the urban community healthcare center as well, while the requirement is 1,880, the existing number is only 636. Then if we talk about the terms of quality education which is being provided in our country, it is obvious that when we venture into the rural areas, we can see the poor educational infrastructure, the issue of absenteeism among the teachers, the issue of proxy teachers, which was very recently in the news in the state of Jharkhand. And because of all that, as per the annual survey of education report, ACER report, the children who can actually do the everyday calculations, the basic calculations, the male, they took around 50.5 minutes of time. And the percent of children at a different arithmetic level on the ACER test, there was a low prevalence which can show that the students in our country, they are not able to solve these basic arithmetic and everyday calculation, thus highly reflecting the quality of education which are being provided to the future of our country. Then comes the gender equality. So as per the gender gap report of 2022, India ranked 135. However, keep this in mind that currently India has improved its ranking to 127. However, we should not take any pride in that. If we look at the various parameters when it comes to the gender equality, in the terms of economic participation and opportunity, we have a terrible ranking of 143, and when it comes to health and survival, it is abysmally low at 146. For example, India has one among the highest gender gap when it comes to the labor force participation rate, where for man it is around 76%, while for women it is around 28%. Thus, there exists a gap of staggering 48%. At the same time, when we are talking about the health of the woman, the maternal mortality ratio in our country is 103 out of 1 lakh women, which is one among the highest in the world. Thus, it is obvious that we are not faring well when it comes to gender equality. At the same time, when we talk about the decent work and economic growth, as per the very recently released India Employment Report of 2024, the labor participation, if we see, it is abysmally low when it comes to women, specifically in the rural areas, and the labor participation is very low when we compare to the percentage from the year of 2000s. Thus, there is this rising issues where we are not faring well in various other sectors such as of health, education, gender equality, creation of employment to provide them with decent work and economic growth, and all of that has actually compounded to the widening inequality as highlighted in the report. Where first of all it talks about the global level, where according to the report, 40% of the global trade in the good is actually concentrated in 3 major countries. And then the market capitalization of the 3 largest tech companies such as your Facebook, Amazon, Tesla, that surpasses the GDP of the 90% countries. It is just like another takeover by the East India Company, where one corporate company actually became much stronger than the nation state's power. And we have all seen the impact which it had on the global world. At the same time, such inequality is also widening at our country, where as per the report, the bottom 50% of the population only contributes to the 15% of the national income, while the top 1% of our population, it earns 23 times more than the average Indian. And if we will talk about the 10,000 richest people in our country, they have income of more than 2,070 times higher than an average income of an Indian. Then in light of all these events, the household debts in our country is actually increasing, which shows that people does not have employment and thus they are taking loans to meet for their basic necessities. And this household debt has actually increased to 40% of the GDP by the year of 2023. Then the financial savings, which is actually act as the major creation of money. When we save the money, keep it to the bank, and our country is actually considered the major growth pillar for our country is the savings and the consumption expenditure. And this financial savings has started plunging to 5% of GDP decline. Then the annual borrowings by our countrymen has actually increased to 5.8% of GDP, and all this shows the severe economic distress which we as an economy are facing. Also, there is an implication on the aggregate demand and consumption. So it is obvious that let's say that if there is a certain section of the population, the richest 1%, they already have got all the things which they want in the life. The maximum they are going to do is to create one more district or just buy one more luxurious car. The major consumption actually takes place in this middle class growth, where we have constant demand for basic necessities such as buying a new TV, buying a small car, then a medium car, then a bigger car. So we always have this increased propensity to consume, but as per the report, there is also the reduction in the size of this middle class, and thus the overall demand in the Indian economy has actually declined. And the major reason for that is obviously, if you will see here, the top 10% share incomes, how it has been increased. The income of top 1%, how it has increased, and now just look at the bottom 50% share, how their share in the income has consistently declined. Thus, to deal with these issues, there has been several steps which has been taken by the government to ensure inclusive growth in our country. The first of which is generation of employment for the bottom 50%, where the government has launched several schemes such as the MG Narega scheme, which provides for 100 days of manual labor. Then there is Kaushal Vikas Yojana 4.0, where we are trying to train the majority of our population with the skills and the demands which are required for the Industry 4.0. Then there is a Startup India initiative, where we are actually promoting our youth to not just rely on government jobs and spend years of their life, rather to start some business and initiative and to become the Tesla and Google of the future. Also, we have to further put impetus on domestic manufacturing, and thus leading to the creation of job. The government has launched the Make in India initiative. Then for the financial inclusion, the JAM Trinity or Jan Dhan bank account, Aadhaar for your identity verification, and the digitalization of economy through mobile Trinity has been done, which has actually led to the unified payment interface. Thus, the digitalization of economy has ensured that there is larger financial inclusion of our population. Then there is Mudra Yojana, which aims to provide for collateral-free loans, to provide for formal channels of credit. Also, there is Kisan Samman Nidhi, where there is transfer of 6,000 rupees annually to the farmer, thus augmenting their income and to ensure that they do not just break down in the distress conditions. Also, to provide education to our future, there is Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao Yojana, under which we can obviously see that the literacy rate for women has significantly increased. Also, there is Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, where we are trying to inculcate the technology as well as value-based education, especially under the National Education Policy 2020. In the health sector, the government is trying to ensure the majority of the population by providing insurance coverage of 5 lakh per family per year under the Ayushman Bharat Yojana. Thus, in the last 10 years, the government has taken several steps to include the majority of the population in the economy and to ensure their growth under the Ujjwala Yojana, the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, the Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana, the Kisan Samman Nidhi. But still we can say that there are stringent steps which are required to ensure the idea of justice based on social, economic and political, which has been envisaged in the preamble of our constitution. Thus, the primacy shall be given to the human development. With these suggestions, just try to solve this practice year question, which is also a PYQ. Comment your answers. We move forward to the next news. The article highlights the lack of impetus which is being given to the major issue of air pollution among the public in the ongoing 18th Lok Sabha election, and thus also provide for some policy measures which shall be adopted and implemented. Thus, the issues revolving around the air pollution forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the larger theme of environment pollution and degradation. Let's first try to inquire about the status of air pollution in our country. Well, as per the World Air Quality Report of 2022, India holds the tag of 8th most polluted country in the world, with 39 out of 50 most polluted cities, where Bhiwadi and Ghaziabad are considered as the most polluted cities in the world as per the World Air Quality Report. Now, the PM 2.5 air quality, which we have already addressed, that they contain certain hazardous elements such as formaldehyde and benzene, the level which we have decided for PM 2.5, it actually crossed severe category at more than 3000 stations. Thus, all of this issue of air pollution which we can see here, where if we track the air pollution across the Indian cities, just look at the number of the red and yellow spots which we have, where the Delhi air quality at very poor level. Just look at the severity of the air pollution in our capital of our country. At the same time, the air we breathe. So try to understand here that the good category is from 0 to 50. And if there is anything which is above 100, that will be considered as poor, very poor and severe. Now look at the cities such as Delhi, your Noida, here is Gurugram, here is Bombay, here is Patna, here is Bhopal. Thus, this rising issue of air pollution, which is actually engulfing the whole country, it has several hazardous consequences, first of all on our health, where it leads to pulmonary diseases, respiratory infections and cardiac arrest, where as per the 2020 World Health Organization report, it led to 1.67 million deaths in our country, and it was the second biggest reason after the communicable diseases. Then it also leads to economic losses, because it is obvious that when there is high amount of air pollution, first and foremost it will affect our health. So it is obvious that the labor productivity will decline. And at the same time, when let's say the majority of the population is facing some or other kind of health issues, the overall consumption demand will decline as well. So all of these issues, as well as including the cost which we now need to apply to reduce this air pollution, the several measures which we need to take, all that actually has led to 36.8 billion loss for our country in the year of 2019, which amounted to 1.4% of our country's GDP. And as per Niti Aayog, this is further going to increase to 3% of GDP by this year itself. Thus, the report highlights the noble initiative which the government took in the form of National Clean Air Program, which was launched in the year of 2019, where first of all there were 102 cities, but now keep this in mind that this has been increased to 131 non-attainment cities. What are the non-attainment cities? Non-attainment cities are those cities which has the air pollution level more than national ambient air quality standard. The earlier target was to reduce the air pollution by 20 to 30% by this year of 2024, and we are going to reduce this air pollution on what level? On the level of 2017. However, now this target has been increased to 40% reduction of air pollution by 2025 under this program. It also led to the build capacity by setting up a national emission inventory, an air information center for data analysis, a source appointment studies, as well as rural monitoring station, where for this purpose, this National Clean Air Program is actually supported by the World Bank, the Swiss Development, the AFD, which is a French funding agencies, etc. Now, the Environment Ministry recently released analysis shows that the PM10 level in the 95 cities had actually improved, and thus we can say that the National Clean Air Program, also as highlighted by the report, is actually taking some positive steps, where it also provides for funds to these cities, where these cities has to implement a national air quality plan, and it has to take several steps to improve the air quality of the city. For example, it also ranks the cities such as Indore being the first one. Then when it comes to the utilization of funds, we can also see that there lies certain leukemas which still persist. First of them is obviously the underutilization of funds. Specifically, if we see in the high polluted areas such as your Amritsar, Pathankot, all of these areas, they have actually led to the underutilization of funds. And if you look at the PM10 and PM2.5 level, that has actually kept on increasing in the recent years from 2019 to 2023. Thus, despite its noble aims and initiatives, the National Clean Air Program has not been able to deliver up to its potential, and thus the report provides for certain suggestive measures. The first of which it states that there shall be this issue of air pollution, it shall become a central political agenda. Because it is obvious that when we look at the European countries, we see that how their youth population of there has leading to such activism when it comes to the climate change, issue of pollution, etc. However, in our country, even when such a general election is taking place, the climate change and issue of pollution has taken a backstage, where obviously the major impetus is still upon the ROTI, KAPDA and MAKAAN, and the obvious reasons we have seen in just the previous session. Now, it also suggests that the funds which are being provided under the National Clean Air Program, it shall be allocated for the on-ground activities, right? So, instead of providing these funds to the top channel, if there is a local initiative which is being taken place, let's say there is some NGO which is actually leading to the forestation, then those funds shall be provided to that particular initiative. Then, instead of creating a top to bottom directive, there shall be creation of micro environments where we can lead to the decentralization of policies, where at local level some innovative measures can be taken, such as to invest in the energy efficient power generation through directing towards solar energy, wind energy, etc. Then to improve the waste management in that particular municipality. Then we can also make our buildings more greener and clearer, right? We can paint them white so there is less absorption of the solar radiation. Also, we can adopt for the Miyawaki method for the urban afforestation. So all these micro environments can be taken and there shall be local initiatives. Then it suggests to identify the pollution at source reasons for their early identification at the municipalities, and such reasons shall be dealt in effective and speedy manner. Finally, it provides for the smart plans where we need to create green and blue spaces, and there shall be a greater public awareness to make sure that we start adopting the climate friendly practices under the LIFE mission which has been launched by the government. And all of this will actually help us not only to achieve our sustainable development goals, such as the goal of 13 to effectively fight against the climate change, but it will also ensure for the human development about which we were talking earlier. Thus, with this suggestion, we move forward to the next news of the day. Vietnam has argued that USA shall list Vietnam off from the non-market economy status as it has implemented several economic reforms already. Thus, this status of non-market economy, which is provided by the USA currently to the 13 countries, forms an important component of your prelims paper under the larger theme of current events of national and international importance. So let's first try to understand why Vietnam has been listed as a non-market economy by USA, which it does on the basis of several parameters, such as the convertible currency. What does it mean? It means that, let's say, if in our country we have a complete currency convertibility, then if there is a foreign direct investment which has been done in our country through USA, then the investor can take its currency completely overnight, thus providing for easy exit and entry mechanisms. In our country, we have complete currency convertibility but partial capital account convertibility as suggested by the Tarapur Committee. Then the USA checks that if the state controls the allocation of resources and prices. So it is obvious that USA, being a capitalist country, it promotes capitalism, and thus if there is a socialistic tendency of the state such as to control the allocation and the resources, then USA will stand against it. Also, it checks that whether the wage rate are being determined by the free bargaining between the labor and the industries. So if there is heavy control of industries on the labor, the chances are that USA will designate the country as a non-market economy. Then remember that even though this category does not fall in the bracket of economy, USA also checks that whether the human rights are being protected in the country or not. So what if the USA is going to put a country under the non-market economy status? What will happen? The USA under this non-market economy status can impose an anti-dumping duty on a particular country. To understand that, let's say, what is anti-dumping duty? So let's say that I am a country A and I am producing a product called as TO, which has very less domestic demand in my country, and the original price of this product, let's say, is 100 rupees. So what I start doing is I start selling this product TO to the country B, let's say USA, at the price of rupees 50. Now it is obvious that because the cost of the product has declined, the demand for TO will increase in USA or in the country B. Now the country B had their original product, let's say army, but because the army in US dollar cost, let's say it is much more expensive than rupees 50, let's say it is rupees 75, it is obvious that people will start buying the product army and they will start buying the product TO. Thus I have lowered down the cost of my product from the domestic rate and I am trying to dump this product in the US's market. Over a period of time, when the people have actually grown a taste for my product, I will just increase the cost of my product, and even then the people will have to buy it. The same thing happened with the China's toy in India, or how the deindustrialization of our Indian economy took place during the time of colonial period, guided by these anti-dumping duties. How USA come to decide this level of anti-dumping duty? Well, as per the article, what USA does is that first it sees that, let's say, there exists a market economy which is not in the category of non-market status, such as Bangladesh. So it will see that what is the cost of the product TO in Bangladesh. Let's say that is 100 rupees. Now if Vietnam is trying to sell this product TO to USA at the cost of rupees 50, then USA will apply the anti-dumping duty of 50 to bring price parity between these two products of Bangladesh and Vietnam. Now, does India also apply such anti-dumping duty? Yes, indeed. We apply such anti-dumping duty against any specific producer or exporter to the country, where if there is any dumped import which is based upon discriminatory price leading to unfair competition, then we do apply on that. Also, we apply the countervailing duty, where if the country is providing any subsidies by the government of the exporting country to individual rates, then the countervailing duty kicks in. Now, the Vietnam has argued that it has taken several reforms and thus it shall be removed from this non-market economy status. Reforms such as it has allowed for foreign direct investment in Vietnam, There is wage negotiation which can take place between the labor and industries under their labor laws. Then it has also allowed for the privatization of the majority of the industries, around 60% of the industries. However, the various associations in USA are counter-arguing against the Vietnam's argument, and they are saying that Vietnam still has restriction on land ownership. It has very weak labor laws, and it is providing cheap duties on shrimps which are being exported from Vietnam, which is actually significantly hampering the shrimp industry of USA. Then the major concern is that what China has done, that it has hugely invested in Vietnam, and then it is selling actually Chinese product through Vietnam's local industries which are funded by the China. Thus, if you'll actually remove the Vietnam from this economy status, it will help whom? China the most, right? It will aid the Chinese firm to circumvent the US tariff. And there are several countries who have actually not granted the market economy status to China. Obviously, if you can see here, USA being one of them. And even in the case of India, only a temporary status has been given to China. So keep these two things in your mind very clearly. The first is anti-dumping duty and the second is non-market economy status. Specifically for the upcoming prelims examination, we move forward to the next news. The White House Office of Science and Technology Policy has directed the NASA, which is US Space Agency, to establish a Coordinated Lunar Time or LTC to act as a standard to measure cislunar operation or any missions which are taking place between Earth and Moon ahead of the launch of Artemis mission. Artemis mission, which marks the re-entry of US on the surface of Moon, when 4 astronauts will visit the surface of the Moon on the year of 2025. Thus, this interesting concept of a standard time for Moon forms an important component of your prelims paper under the larger theme of space and technology. The first question which arises is that what is even the need for setting such a standard time for Moon? Well, to understand that, there is a very interesting story that back in 1960s when USA was launching its missions to Moon, a mission has actually landed on the Moon surface, but the people back at NASA got to know about it only 2 minutes later. The reason for that is that there existed a time difference between Earth and Moon which the NASA scientists did not account for. So let's say that Moon is actually completes its one standard day is calculated as 29.5 Earth days. However, the Moon rotates on its axis once in 27.3 days, and it is also the very same time it actually takes to revolve around Earth. That is why we keep on seeing only one side of the Moon, right? Now, one may wonder that if Moon is completing its one rotation in 27.3 days, then why we are taking the Moon's standard day to be 29.5 Earth days? Because the Sun's rays which is falling on the Moon, when it falls on the 27.3 days as per NASA, it is actually a bit tilted and not as it was on the first day, that was the new Moon. So, a time between new moon to new moon is considered to be 29.5 Earth days, when 2 days later from 27.3 days, the sun rays will again fall in the very same direction how it was falling. Now, let's say that there exists a theory of relativity given by Albert Einstein, which says that if there is a smaller mass in comparison to Earth, it is obvious that it will bend the time-space fabric much lower than comparison to the heavier mass. Thus, it will have the weaker gravitational pull, and thus the time on Moon will actually pass faster than it is passing on the Earth, and that is around 58.7 microseconds per day as per NASA. Now, how we calculate different time zones on our Earth, right? So let's say that our Earth complete its one rotation of 360 degree, because the circumference of the sphere is 360 degree. So we complete our one rotation and that take place in 24 hours. Which means that Earth rotates 15 degree in 1 hour, and thus we can have 15 degree time zones or 24 time zones across the Earth, starting from the 0 degree or the green meridian. Now, as per moon, the moon rotates 0.5 degree per hour. Thus, it will actually require to creation of 720 time zones. So, let's imagine a family. In family, there is father, mother and the child. The father's day starts at 5 o'clock. The mother is a bit lazy, her day starts at 7. The child is the laziest and he is waking up at 2 in the afternoon. Can we say that there is a very less coordination which exists among this family? On the very similar line, let's imagine that now there is rising lunar exploration, because we are just planning to create a kind of a colonization of the moon in the future. And that we can see from the various lunar exploration missions such as the Chandrayaan-3 of India, the Change-6 of China, or the upcoming Artemis mission of USA. So what will happen that when all of these countries will have simultaneous mission on the moon, then let's say USA is there and the time according to USA, because it will calculate the time of its mission according to the US time. So then there is this, on this place the time on the moon is 9:35 p.m. in the night. It will be 9:35 a.m. in the China if the Chinese mission is there, Change-6. And as per India, it will be 7 in the morning. Thus, we can say that there will exist a very less coordination among various space agencies. Thus, there has arisen a need for the standard time for the moon, and that is the coordinated lunar time, the concept of which has been proposed since 1960. Very recently, the European Space Agency has launched a Moonlight Mission 2023, under which it is going to put a lot of satellites around the moon, and it will try to calculate the various time zones which are exist in our Earth and how it is reflecting on the moon. Now, this lunar coordinated time will be aligned with the coordinated universal time which we have. This coordinated universal time which we have is measured by the atomic clocks, which measure the time on the vibration of the atom. As you guys can see here, the primary standard of the time is the rotation of the Earth, and the de facto is taken from the atomic clock. How it calculates is that the 1 atomic second is basically this much orbital transition of an vibration of an atom, and that is of cesium. Now, the coordinated universal time which you can see here, it is nothing but it also adjusts for the leap seconds, and that is your GMT plus the number of hours in your time zone. So when we are talking about it, we also have a solar time which basically measures what? The rotation of Earth on its axis relative to Sun. And this coordinated universal time is actually kept within the 0.9 second of the solar time. Thus, in our Earth, we have different times, such as the local solar time will be there, then there will be a local mean time, finally a standard time which we can see on the map on our watch. Then there will be a universal coordinated time where we are calculating it from the atomic clock, and that will lead to the universal time. And the LTC which will be setting up on the moon, that will be coordinated with this universal time. Thus, as the when the LTC will be set up, the astronauts can follow a 24-hour cycle just as they do on the International Space Station. And as per the NASA scientists, it can actually lead to week-long days and week-long nights on the moon. So keep this very interesting concept, that how we decide our coordinated universal time, and this concept of the rotation of moon and revolution of moon, and we move forward to the next news, in which we are going to talk about some very important news segments which has actually featured in your today's newspaper, which can actually help you to eliminate some important statements in the upcoming prelims examination. The first of which talks about the vital test. which is basically a rapid blood test to identify typhoid. What is typhoid? Typhoid is nothing but a common food and waterborne disease which is caused by the Salmonella typhi or any other related bacteria. So remember that typhoid is a bacterial disease. And what do we do from the vital test? We actually measure the amount of antibodies which our body has formed to deal with this typhoid. Now, typhoid has several symptoms such as high fever, headache, abdominal pain, etc. But is it fatal? Yes, indeed. As per World Health Organization, there was reporting of 90 lakh cases in 2023, which amounted to 1.1 lakh deaths. And if we talk specifically from a study which was conducted in the urban areas of our country, there took place 576 to 1173 cases per 1 lakh child years. Child years means that a child was actually regulated for 1 year. Now, there are several issues which are associated with this viral test. First of which is that there shall be a time gap which shall be taken between the two serum tests, and that is of 7 to 14 days. Now, such long time period is rarely feasible and a lot of time consuming. Then there is presence of antibodies in the high typhoid burden areas. So basically what happens that if the typhoid is actually impacting this area, a lot of people will actually get mildly affected and they will already create antibodies. Now, if someone will test just the antibody which is present in my body, even though I am not severely affected by typhoid, I will be diagnosed as a false negative. And then the doctor will advise me to take some antibiotics which cost from 500 rupees to 5,000. Thus leading to a hefty out-of-pocket expenditure. And because of such irrational use of antibiotics, it has actually led to the development of the antimicrobial resistance as well. Keep these important points in your mind. We move forward to the next news, which talks about Article 243T, and it is related to the state of Nagaland. What does Article 243 provides for? Well, the clause 4 of 74th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1992 under Article 243 provides for 33% reservation of seats for women in the urban local bodies, but the Naga Hohos, which is basically an apex tribal body in the state of Nagaland, it actually claimed that such provision of reservation for women, it actually violates the special provisions under Article 371A. Then we are going to follow the story which took place in Nagaland. Well, in the year of 2004, the only civic body election, which was also the first, took place in Nagaland. However, no reservation of seat was provided for the women. Then in 2006, the then Nagaland government, it actually amended the Municipal Act of 2001 and provided for the 33% of the reservation as guided under Article 243T. Then in 2009, when such elections were being taken place and the reservation was provided, it actually led to a lot of violation and opposition. Thus, ultimately in 2009, such urban local bodies polls were postponed indefinitely. Again in 2012, another attempt was made when the resolution was passed in the Nagaland State Legislative Assembly to exempt the Nagaland from the provision of Article 243T and to recognize the special powers which it has got under Article 371A. Then in 2016, this resolution was revoked and finally elections were allowed to take place with the reservation. Finally, in 2017, again, this provision was declared null and void. And finally, in 2023, very recently, a bill has been passed to provide for reservation. Keep this in mind that Nagaland very recently chose its first women legislative assembly member. At the same time, there is a major opposition from the people which says that such reservation for women, it actually insulates the religious and social practices of Naga, where there is no such tradition for the participation of women at a political front. Keep these important points in your mind. We move forward to the next news, where our India has become the third largest solar producing country in the year of 2023. where the first is obviously the China with production of 584 billion units. The second is USA with 228 billion units, and in the year of 2023, India produced 113 billion units. However, keep this in your mind that when it comes to the installed capacity, India is currently at 5th and Japan is actually at 3rd. So now one may wonder that, wait a minute, we are producing more than Japan, then why our installed capacity is low? Well, our installed capacity comes at 5th. Japan has more installed capacity, but because they might not have higher demand in the year of 2023, that is why they had less production than us. Also, when we talk about the installed renewable capacity in India, as we can see, the solar power with 71 gigawatt has the major share, followed by the wind power. But as per the Niti Aayog, the installed capacity of our country, of the total power generation which we have, that is 18%, but the total power which we produce, of the total power which we produce in the country, the solar power which we produce was only 6%, which means that we are still producing less than our installed capacity. Now we move forward to the last news, which talks about a concept of a digital arrest. Well, very recently what happened that one of my friend, he actually got a call. His name is Vikas, and he gets a call from this custom officer which says that your product has actually been confiscated at this particular place, and there was some illegal trade in which you were involved, and now you will have to pay fine. Otherwise, there will be a government inquiry or a government proceeding which will take place against you. This is a rising concept of a digital arrest, where these scammers, they actually hold you on live calls or on live telephone calls, and they keep you as a hostage and try to extract money from you through illicit means. A very interesting concept which can also be asked in your prelims examination. Do read about this story, and with this we have reached to the end of our discussion today. Do not forget to attempt the questions at the end of the video and test your knowledge. We will meet in a very interesting discussion very soon. Till then, all the very best for your preparation, guys, and thank you.